Well, I'm going to call this moment a good bad moment because it's great because we're talking about science of mind. Calling it a bad moment because we come to the conclusion of our 4-week series and I just love talking about this. So we started with the thing itself, moved to the way it works, what it does, and today, how to use it. And David was John when we practiced. David would say them with me. That's awesome. I love it. I love the enthusiasm. And that is what this teaching brings to any of us that are out here practicing it, getting some good laughs at ourselves when we are tripping over ourselves and getting some great aha moments when we are realizing that we're using it, that it's working. It is an ever-stimulating adventure of life for me. So when we give these talks each year, I have to literally force myself to read through that entire section in the introduction. And the reason isn't because I don't want to read it. It's because I can't get through the first page or paragraph or sentence without having so many thoughts and ideas in my head about that I just want to start writing. Oh, we've got to talk about this and that because it's illuminating. And every time you read one of these statements, it's illuminating all over. This teaching is magnificent in a multitude of ways, and we're going to share just a few of the ways that came to us first when we thought of that. The first thing I thought before I got off the first page was it's both easy to understand and so deep you could talk about one sentence all day long. In fact, I have often thought as I've been reading Holmes, maybe we should just take that one sentence and have a class one evening. And then I thought, well, the 1-hour class of discussion could actually turn into a pajama party because we could probably talk about that one sentence and how it relates for us in our life all day, all night.
I think the first thing that hit me was we live in an environment of tremendous, unlimited cosmic energy immediately available for our use for whatever we desire to experience. And what's amazing beyond that is we don't have to work the process or go to God to get it because it's already here.
The next idea that came through me about this teaching is it makes complete sense, and it's sometimes a challenge to align our thought with the principle that activates our best life, the life we desire. We have to put a little effort into, okay, what am I to think to create the way I desire to? And for me, that's a lot of fun.
That's a perfect segue into my next one. The mechanism to achieve our dreams is not complicated or technical. It's simply holding conscious thought. Yet we may muddy it up trying to find some special magical formula to make it happen.
Yes, and all these ideas are just the tip of discovery called the science of mind and spirit. So after I finished reading the whole section, I thought to myself, perhaps we get confused during childhood. Most of us, I'm making a guess, we're taught to be kind, caring people. And so we carry that with us. But perhaps none of us were taught about the power of our own thought or told the truth of who we are. I know that I would say that I did spend time trying to ensure that my own children knew this growing up. But it made me really wonder if as I said that out loud, do they think that? Would they say, oh yes you did, or would they say, no, we didn't feel like that? So it is a growing idea that we all have to do for ourselves. I personally don't ever remember being told, Deborah, you are such a loving, kind, wonderful little girl. And I wonder if you heard that, or little boy. I wonder if you heard that. Because those are important messages that help us to realize the truth of who we are. I know in conversations we often say, well, it took me years to get here. It took me years to realize the power that lies within me. And many of us are actually not just not told the truth, but we're taught lies that tell us that we're sinners in need of forgiveness, or that we're unworthy of all the good stuff. And so we carry that burden around with us until we don't. But that's the question. How long are we willing to carry that burden? When we know the actual truth is that you are all the good that God is. And the reason for this is because God is our creator, not your birth mom or dad. You are not the byproduct of two other human beings. You are a divine idea in the mind of God that has become tangible. We simply come through to humans as a means of becoming human. You already existed prior to that. And you have the power to use the original spirit as you were designed to do, in harmony and in beauty. So Holmes gives us a method to this task in front of us, or this glory in front of us. He says you should learn to control your thought processes and bring them into line with reality. And by reality, he's talking about that union of love and law. Yes, we are loving beings, but we are also beings and energy of the laws, the spiritual laws. Ernest Holmes gives us a simple method. He says, have an affirmative attitude, be positive, stable in your thought, and keep your thought toward unity with spirit that is complete and perfect. So we are to believe that every wrong condition can change, because it can change. And we know that because we've proven some of them. Wrong conditions will not remain if there was no one to experience them. I remember reading that about when I was first diagnosed with cancer. I remember going to Ernest Holmes and looking up everything I could and reading how there's only sickness if you believe there is sickness. And thinking, wow, I'm going to work with that one. I'm going to work really well with that one. And I know a lot of you have also. And so remembering that if we're not willing to experience sickness, then sickness cannot remain where we are. So be that person. Be the keeper of your own thoughts. Be the one to rise up and walk this glorious planet Earth as the beautiful one with all the power that is instilled in you.
I think most everybody here has been in this teaching for a while, and if not, you've been long enough to understand some of the basic principles of it, and you understand that this tremendous power around us and within us is really available and can be used and is used in our lives. And we see it happening in our lives. We see our lives responding according to that which we think about, and we also see it happening in our environment. We always see it happening in positive and negative ways according to what we're thinking about, what's going on around us. And we have learned to use that, as Deborah was talking about, to use that power and to use that gift that we have. Ernest Holmes says the world at large has not yet come to consider the principle of mental practice in the same light that it has considered other given principles of life and action. Its apparent intangibility is lessened whenever and wherever anyone actually demonstrates the supremacy of spiritual thought force over apparent material resistance. I believe that is one of the primary points of this teaching, is understanding that what we see in our environment, we can change. Science has long believed that thought processes have no power over materiality, and we have actually proven that not to be the fact. And so we can use this intelligent force around us, within us, to actually change conditions. Ernest Holmes says, we are surrounded by an intelligent force and substance from which all things come, the ultimate essence in the invisible and subjective world of all visible and objective forms and conditions. Now he uses these words, invisible and visible, a lot in this part of the text. And I jumped on that and I said, wow, because I've been reading some books about all that kind of stuff, and I think it's really fascinating. The idea that there is an intelligent force in the universe, an unformed substance that we can mold into that which we wish to experience. It's all around us, within us, everywhere. We just need to choose that which we wish to experience and bring it into manifestation. The law is always working through us, whether we are aware of it or not. So when you have stinking thinking, it's working. When you have positive energy and loving thoughts, it's working. And think about it, literally. Think about it in your life, how it's working. He says, we must trust the invisible, for it is the sole cause of that which is visible. It says that in the Bible. It says, things which are seen were not made of things which do appear. We think ideas and thoughts, and they manifest in our lives when we imbue them with faith or belief. So we create things in our experience from thoughts which are invisible. So that which is invisible manifests into that which is visible, whether it's visible or experienced in any other way. It actually becomes real to us. Ernest Holmes says this close to the end of this section, and I love it when he talks about things in these terms, and I get all excited. He says, a new light is coming into the world. We are on the borderland of a new experience. The veil between spirit and matter is very thin. The invisible passes into invisibility through our faith. The invisible passes into visibility through our faith in it. A new science, a new religion, a new philosophy are rapidly being developed. This is in line with the evolution of the great presence, and nothing can hinder its progress. A new science, a new religion, a new philosophy. That's what we call it, new thought. The things that we think about are new ideas that have not been happening in the past necessarily. I think little did Holmes know that one of the greatest obstacles to his teaching would be old science, old religion, old philosophy, holding on to old paradigms, old principles that have worked in the past, but we're realizing they're not reality anymore. Science is changing, and I've made it my goal, personal goal, to talk about that, to understand what is really happening in the world and what's really happening in our lives, as opposed to what we have been always told in science class and so on. Here's an example. You heard the name Nikola Tesla. Fascinating, fascinating scientist. He was bringing the invisible energy into awareness and into use. Invisible energy, bringing it into our actual ability to use it. He pursued his ideas of wireless lighting and worldwide wireless electric power distribution in his high voltage and high frequency power experiments. He researched and patented methods to draw electricity from the environment to harness electrical charges from the atmosphere around us and the Earth's natural electrical, or what he called radiant energy. He believed the planet was charged with electrical energy and could be tapped using specialized devices, and that he could then send electrical energy through the atmosphere without wires. And he was able to do this on a relatively small scale. In his laboratory, he could send energy into light bulbs and have them light up without wires, just energy passing through the air. He made a boat that could be operated on a lake through electrical energy that was passed through the air to the boat. Had an electric motor, but had no electric device within it. He actually built a big tower called the Wardenclyffe Tower in Long Island, New York, in which he was going to attempt to send a signal across the Atlantic Ocean. At that time, it was a real common thing. There was a race to find out who could create an electronic telegraph that could produce a signal all the way across the ocean. And a lot of people were trying to do it. But his idea was to send electrical energy across the ocean, so he thought, well, sending a signal should be a very easy thing to do. We may know that Marconi in Italy actually was the first to do that. You may not know that it's believed that he may have stolen Tesla's research to be able to create the power needed to send that signal. So Tesla maybe did come up with the idea to actually make it happen, but he did not have the money available at the time to actually make it happen. Well, because Marconi's experiment worked, and he was the first to do it, he was the one that won the race. Tesla's funding ceased, and his tower was dismantled, and he was never able to build it up again, and he was never really able to do very much research after that period of time because he never really had very much money after that time. He died in debt. And his research files were seized by the U.S. government after his death. So we don't know exactly how his process worked. Well, the implication that I'm making here is that we are living within an energetic environment. We are living within an energetic atmosphere. We are in the midst of humongous amounts of energy available to us at all times to use however we choose to use it. It is there. That's a teaching of Ernest Holmes. It's not just spiritual, it's scientific, and it has been proven. And when we know how to use it, we can absolutely use it for whatever we desire. There is very little stretch between the teachings or the findings of Tesla and the teachings of Ernest Holmes, because they're all talking about energy that is around us, within us, and we are in the process of using it at all times. Quantum science, psi research, AI, epigenetics, fractal geometry, consciousness studies are all working together and are all backing up this teaching called the science of mind, validating the science of mind. So I think the next chapter of the science of mind, after how to use it, should be, so use it.
Go, Reverend David. That's awesome. I'm going to pick up a little bit with the idea of the tangible and intangible, because I think that's an important part of this section. Holmes talks about the idea that practical application, which means you and me doing the work, is necessary in metaphysical research. So as we're doing this, we are a part of that energy of growing science of mind and growing this idea so that more people know that life doesn't have to be miserable and we get to decide. he talks about practical application being necessary in metaphysical research because the principle of metaphysics seems less tangible to most people than other scientific principles. Most people live in that world of physical science rather than mental science. In truth, all principles are as intangible. Many people just haven't realized the power given to them through the principles of mental practice. Consciousness, as the ground of all being, works through us and it works as us. And I'm going to repeat one of the statements that David quoted with Ernest Holmes. Its apparent intangibility is lessened whenever and wherever anyone actually demonstrates the supremacy of spiritual thought force over apparent material resistance. Now, this doesn't mean for us as spiritual practitioners that we deny the tangible. We don't. We don't deny appearance. However, it does mean that we study and we learn to understand that we are using a power that knows a greater idea of the tangible than perhaps we do in that moment. And we are using a power that knows a greater idea of the tangible than we are presently experiencing. And using this power, we are able to demonstrate that greater idea. So I came up with a simple example this week, nothing big and heavy. I came up with the idea of caring for your teeth. Isn't that interesting? Because John talked about that from Ecclesiastes. And I was kind of leaning against David like, oh my gosh, teeth ideas are coming up all around us here.
And it's funny, Kathy said something that I was saying too, so.
So my thought was this. How we care for our teeth determines whether they remain or not, and the state that they remain in very frequently. Now, I know there are variants within anything I'm going to say here, but I have noticed that when I go to get my teeth cleaned from the hygienist, she says to me, "Are you using your electric toothbrush?" And of course, years ago I didn't have one, so I said, no, I don't even have one. And then I got one, and then I didn't use it very often. And she asked me every time, so obviously that's important. So it got to the point where the last time she asked me, I was able to say, well, most of the time, but it takes me so darn long when I use the electric toothbrush. And she said, why does it take you so long? And I said, I don't know, it takes me about 20 minutes to brush my teeth when I use the electric one as opposed to that fast one that goes in there. And she said, well, why? And I said, because with the electric one, the brush is little and I have to like wrap around each tooth. And it just takes a long time. I want to make sure it gets clean, so I leave it there for a while as opposed to all that energy, that busy energy of the handheld one. Well, the electric one's handheld too, manual toothbrush. And she said, well, I still suggest that you spend the 20 minutes doing it because it will matter. And so I started being more cognizant of what's happening. And I'll tell you what, I have noticed now that I use the electric one almost all the time, I have noticed that my test for whether the hygienist does a good job or not is to use my tongue. Do anybody else do that? Oh, good, lots of us do that. Good, I'm not alone. So I rub my tongue around. I've noticed that now that I use the electric one almost all the time, my teeth feel clean all the time, not just partly clean with the manual one. So I know that's a simple idea, but think about it. The thought originates from the greater yet to be. It comes through me. I get to make a choice, or not, as to how often and how well I clean my teeth. And that creates my result, my demonstration in life. So from this simple idea of care for your teeth to the most significant situations in our life, the science of mind works as we use it. So let's return to the meditation this morning from Ernest Holmes. The first sentence, I am a center of the divine mind, a point of God-conscious life, truth, and action. That's each one of us. And there is a process in revealing healing of any kind. It consists of the time and effort we undergo in our realization of truth. And so as we conclude today, let us go to Reverend David again and his favorite quote from the Science of Mind text.
And if you hear it often enough, it will be yours too, as well. If we believe it will not work, it really works by appearing to not work. When we believe that it cannot and will not, then according to principle, it does not. But when it does not, it still does. Only it does according to our belief that it will not. And so it is.